This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have a very important show. This week we had the funeral of President H.W. Bush. I have a column that I wrote about that because the take in using that funeral and the life of H.W. Bush to use against the President of the United States, Donald Trump, to try to diminish him, frankly, was despicable. So go to WND.com, go to freedomwatchusa.org, read that column, because you're going to get stuff on this show that you won't hear anybody else from any place else. You know, we just don't go along to get along or get along to go along, however you want to say it. We make the news. And that's what we've been doing in the last several weeks. Now, we're going to have Dinesh D'Souza on the show in our third segment. You know, he's an excellent film writer. He's an excellent author. His latest book, Death of a Nation. I want to get his take on what's been going on these days because Dinesh was persecuted by an Obama Justice Department on campaign finance violations as alleged. And, of course, we know with the report, the sentencing report of the New York District Attorney, that is the Southern District of New York, the U.S. Attorney, yesterday, they're accusing the president of campaign finance violations, which, you know, even if they occurred, which they did not, is not the worst thing in the world. And in fact, Hillary committed much bigger ones. When I was running Judicial Watch back in the 1990s, early 2000s, she took $2 million of illegal campaign contributions and got away scot-free. This was for her New York Senate campaign. But I want to talk about what I've been doing because we're on the front lines. As you know, I represent the New York Times bestseller, the investigative reporter, someone who's not afraid to tell it like it is and to reveal it like it is, Jerome Corsi. Now, he's been asked by the special counsel Robert Mueller to lie, to testify against the president. And if he doesn't do that, he's been threatened with prosecution. But then along came the special counsel and his henchmen, the deputy prosecutors and such, and offered him a, quote, sweetheart deal that he wouldn't get any jail time if he simply pled to one felony count for lying. That's under 18 U.S.C. 1001 false statements. But he refused to do that. He said, I can't swear to a lie under God. Jerry's a very religious man, like I am and like many of us are. And he couldn't look at his creator if he did something like that, nor would he sell out as president with false statements because he is a patriot. As you know, last Monday, we filed a complaint against special counsel Robert Mueller, against his prosecutors, Aaron Zelinsky, against Mark Goldstein, against Jeannie Rhee, who I went up against with the Clinton Foundation when I filed a racketeering lawsuit in Palm Beach federal court years ago. All of these people have major conflicts of interest. They're all rabid leftist Democrats. We all know that they're trying to destroy the president. I don't need to belabor that. But Corsi stood up to the special counsel, and he asked for an investigation. He sent the complaint, which I prepared with my co-counsel David Gray and others, to Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker. We sent it to the U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia, where these criminal acts occurred by Mueller and his staff, because what they're doing is they're threatening a witness, they're tampering with a witness, they're asking a witness to lie, ironically under 18 U.S.C. 1001, which they're trying to pin on Corsi unfairly and unjustly. And we filed it with the Office of Professional Responsibility. That's like the Bar Association inside of the Justice Department. And we filed it with the D.C. Bar. Well, don't expect much of them. They're run by ultra-leftists who've donated heavily to the Democrat campaign, but I'm putting them on the spot. I'm seeing if they'll actually do their duty because they've looked the other way with David Kendall a Democrat, Williams and Connolly, Clinton's lawyer, who helped destroy 33,000 emails, who obstructed justice. They've looked the other way with Lanny Davis, who, sent forth lies with regard to Michael Cohen into the media. Yet that D.C. bar is entertaining a complaint against Kellyanne Conway for something she just said on Fox News. So, I put them on the spot. But we have very hard-hitting case here in terms of the Justice Department because it is controlled by Matthew Whitaker, and it will soon be controlled by William Barr. Now, I have some reservations about the president nominating William Barr, but we expect results. Now, Barr has been on record as saying that he believes that, this is a witch hunt, in effect. He's on record as saying things are out of control. Now, let's see what he does. He's 68 years old. He was formerly an attorney general under H.W. Bush, which is not comforting, I might say, because Bush basically didn't stand for much of anything, and you could read my column again for that. And when he did, it was counterproductive. We can deify people in death, and I certainly mourn the death of our 41st president. But let's not make somebody into something he's not because it sounds good and because it helps boost ratings on Fox News or someplace else. The fact is that William Barr is an establishment attorney general when he's going to be confirmed. And we expect somebody who's really going to take the left to the woodshed at this point, because the only one that's been persecuted here are people like Jerry Corsi, like the president himself, and a number of others in and around the president. We want equal justice. We don't want skewed justice, which is what we've had. So I am concerned about the appointment of William Barr. I wish they had appointed another Barr, Bob Barr, who I worked with, who we introduced articles of impeachment when Clinton was the president. And in fact, it went all the way to the Senate. And although we didn't get a conviction, we made the point. But getting back to Corsi, this is extremely important because with regard to this Justice Department, they have no choice, in my opinion, but to look into the criminality of Robert Mueller. We've asked that he be removed, that a new a new special counsel be appointed, someone who's fair, who's neutral. We've asked that he be disbarred, no pun intended, with the new Attorney General designate, William Barr. We want Mueller and his staff disbarred for what they've done. And there needs to be justice here. There hasn't been justice. And we saw coming out just last Friday sentencing reports of Paul Manafort, of Michael Cohen, earlier in the week, one involving Michael Flynn. And it's clear that Mueller and his staff have absolutely nothing on the President of the United States, nothing that certainly will result in any indictment. And if there is a campaign finance violation, it's quite minor, and I doubt that there is. There really isn't. I mean, the President used his own money with regard to Stormy Daniels and the other person that's involved, the other woman. So these are the things that need to be addressed. And my representation of Jerome Corsi is important because it's really the first time that we've had an opportunity to frontally go against Robert Mueller and his staff. We've been nipping at the edges, with regard to a lot of things we're doing. Sure, our citizens' grand juries are important, and we will commission them in January. We're not going to do it in Ventura County, where a lot of our volunteers are, in California, conservative pocket there. We'll choose the jurors neutrally. But this is an opportunity because I'm in a defense posture with Corsi, and we trust that he's not going to be indicted. It would be a mistake by Special Counsel Mueller and his staff to do that, because that'll give me an opportunity to challenge Mueller's mandate and his authority, taking it all the way to the Supreme Court, if the Supreme Court will accept it. And we have some other things up our sleeve. Watch what we do this week, because there needs to be accountability here. And Corsi took a stand. He's really the only major witness in this entire witch hunt who has stood up to Robert Mueller. We have a lot of people going out there on TV and giving interviews and saying this and that. But Corsi laid it on the line. And go to our website at larryclayman.com. I'm handling the case in my private capacity, but you also can see news about it at Judicial Watch. Freudian slip. I was the founder and the one who conceived of Judicial Watch. Freedom Watch does what Judicial Watch does today because we bring hard-hitting cases. We do these kinds of things. Nobody at Judicial Watch really can be a criminal defense lawyer in this kind of posture. Tom Fitton's not a lawyer. So we're in a unique position here, okay? And we need your support. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, contribute to what we're doing in that respect. Go to Corsi's website, corsination.com, and contribute to his legal defense fund. Because these are important issues of the day, and Jerome Corsi represents the linchpin of attempting to get justice. It's something that we cannot shirk and put aside. And as the country comes unglued, we see that around the world that other countries are also coming unglued. We are under attack by the left. Mueller is the vehicle of the left, and he's the vehicle of the Republican never-Trumper establishment. But this is just one manifestation. We see violent riots in Paris. We're going to ask Dinesh D'Souza about that because he's a great commentator and analyst, a very bright man in terms of the dynamics of how the left is trying to overtake and take control of Western democracies. And just Saturday, we see violence in the streets in Paris. It reminds me of the events of May 1968. I wrote a thesis about that when I was at Duke University, when students and communists and others tried to take over France. It was a mini revolution. Well, that's what we're going through in France today. That's what we're going through in the United States today. And Mueller is at the tip of this sword that is being used to take down the President of the United States. If we lose President Trump as a president, we'll never have this opportunity again to make America great. And that's why Freedom Watch, your Freedom Watch, is in effect his defense counsel. He really has no lawyers that know what they're doing. You can see how he's being dragged along to the guillotines, reference to the French Revolution. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, support our cause, donate with tax-deductible contributions, donate to Corsi's Legal Defense Fund, because he's in a unique position right now. I'm going to be right back with the second segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We're going to talk about a decision which Judge Royce Lamberth issued this week, which is extremely important. I'll be right back.
Fearless.
Disclaimer, he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
You don't care, he uses the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
You all have heard me talk about him before. He's the finest federal judge in the United States. He's really the only one that I know of, other than Judge Hainan in the Southern District of Texas, who nullified Obama's executive order granting amnesty to 5 million illegal aliens. He's the only one in recent years who has stood up against a tyrannical federal government. And you remember Judge Lamberth during the days that I was running Judicial Watch, where he issued a lot of really great rulings on our behalf, which allowed me to depose nearly all of the Clinton White House, the Commerce Department, uncovering a lot of scandals. And this week, Judge Lamberth rose from the dead again. I mean, he isn't dead. He's a very vibrant individual. And he issued a ruling. He cited a case where I was the lead counsel during the days at Judicial Watch. It was called Judicial Watch versus Department of Commerce. It involved Ron Brown. It was where he gave me latitude to look into Clinton bribery because I had asked the Commerce Department to reveal documentation through Freedom of Information Act lawsuits showing that the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton-Gore campaign were actually selling seats on trade missions, in particular to China, for large campaign contributions. Now, that is illegal. That is a campaign finance violation and other violations. And, of course, the Clinton Commerce Department hid the documents. I was able ultimately to get a ruling that I could take the deposition of Ron Brown, Commerce Secretary, who was highly corrupt. He was formerly head of the DNC, all-time leading Democratic fundraiser. Mysteriously, perhaps not so mysteriously, Brown died on a trip to Croatia right during the week that I was supposed to depose him. It's a long story. You can read about it in my book, Horrors, Why, and How I Came to Fight the Establishment. You can find that and buy it at Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. It got 5-star rating. I mean, it came second in an international book fair. I mean, it tells you my life story, but it tells you the corruption. And today I have a new book. It's called Essays of a Madman. It's all of the columns I've written all over the years. It's more than 600 columns and 4-volume set. So if you donate over $250 to Freedom Watch, go to freedomwatchusa.org, I'll send you this for free because it's a very important chronicle of how the country has hit the rock bottom. But Judge Lamberth exercised judicial authority this week the way he should have exercised it. It was a lawsuit brought by my former group, Judicial Watch. Of course, they get documents, and sometimes that's good. You know, you need hard-hitting cases like we bring at Freedom Watch as well. I have my issues with Fitton. I have my issues with Judicial Watch. I don't feel that they're extremely ethical people. But on the other hand of the coin, when something good comes out, that's important. And Lamberth ruled this week that he would allow discovery into the hiding of Hillary Clinton's 33,000 email, the private email server with Benghazi and everything else. Now, we have a parallel suit on that, so we're going to ask to be part of that discovery as well. But Lamberth is allowing the public to get into the motivations of Hillary Clinton in hiding that email. And if indeed discovery is done correctly, and I have concerns about Judicial Watch, they don't have really trial lawyers there. When they took depositions before with regard to Umar Abedin, they didn't ask questions really, frankly, that were very hard-hitting, and the Obama administration escaped unscathed. But this time, the job really needs to be done, and Judge Lamberth will back up that discovery. I know him from past experience. And if it can be shown that Hillary Clinton purposefully hid email that should have been produced on FOIA, that's criminal, you see? And that's important because it's an opportunity to try to hold her accountable. In fact, during the days when I was at Judicial Watch and Judge Lamberth was making rulings, we actually had a criminal contempt trial over hiding email in the White House. Well, that's what I want to tell you about this great judge, because there's only a few of them in this country. And that's why I started Judicial Watch back in 1994, and it's why I do what I do at Freedom Watch right now. Like the president, I've been critical of the federal judiciary in particular. You know, you can't play these Pollyanna games like the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and say, oh, we're all independent, we're neutral, we've been confirmed by the Senate, consequently we're like God, we can do no wrong. These judges do a lot of wrong, we know that. But this judge is one that stands out. So let's salute Judge Royce Lamberth this week and go to freedomwatchusa.org. Read about his ruling. Understand that this is why we need a courageous judiciary. I'm going to be right back with Dinesh D'Souza because we need to get some insight on what's been going on worldwide. We today are in a revolution left against right. So I want you to hear from him. We'll be right back. In the meantime, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with a great thinker, a great historian, a great author, a great film writer, my friend Dinesh D'Souza. His recent book is Death of a Nation. Tremendous book, tremendous Hollywood film, a courageous individual. And I wanted to bring him on because I want to put everything in perspective. What's been going on with the witch hunt of Robert Mueller, with my client Jerry Corsi, who I'm defending, who, you know, is being set up much like Dinesh was set up by the Obama Justice Department years ago. And I want to get his take on what's going on in France and Paris in particular as we speak with the yellow vests and this revolt. So Dinesh, thank you for giving us your time and your thoughts, and wanted to have your take on what's going on with Jerry Corsi and with the Mueller investigation, and this week with the sentencing reports of Robert Manafort, with Michael Flynn, and of course Michael Cohen.
Well, having been exposed to this process a little bit myself, it's important for people to realize that what we see in the public domain is the sort of proverbial tip of the iceberg. And so the Mueller people will say, oh, we've got this guy and he's pleaded to this. And it appears like, wow, the guy's voluntarily admitted to something. But as you know better than anyone else, in reality, there's a process of bludgeoning and intimidation that has gone on behind the scenes, in which very likely the government has said, if you don't plead to this, we're going to get you on this and get you on that. And the get you here refers to the accordion-like federal statutes in which they're able to essentially take the same thing you did and describe it 5 different ways and put 5 different charges on it. So I've been through it, and I've seen that the whole process, in a sense, relies on a certain kind of fakery. I mean, it's not the Stalinist show trial in that they don't pull your fingernails out, but they use legal bludgeoning to get people to admit to things that they never did, and then they can triumphantly hold a press conference and they say, see, the guy acknowledged he did it.
Well, that's exactly right. And I know for a fact, and what's been going on in this Mueller grand jury, the people are being threatened. Jerry was threatened, if he didn't lie, with life imprisonment. He's 72 years old. I mean, that would be the ball game. That would be it. There are other witnesses that have been threatened with taking their licenses away, practice medicine, to do this, to do that. And it's a very serious matter because you're in there in a grand jury and your back's up against the wall, and these prosecutors are beating up on you, and they're trying to scare the heck out of you. And a lot of people cave. And the thing about Corsi is that he didn't cave, okay? He's standing up to them. And as I said during the first part of this show, I mean, it gives us an opportunity, and I hope that Mueller is smart enough not to indict Corsi, because this will give us an opportunity legally to challenge his authority, his mandate. He should have been confirmed by the Senate, as the Democrats are claiming with Matt Whitaker at the time. And it's more than a witch hunt. It's a total breakdown of our justice system. And that's what we saw with you, and we see it with others today. We see Manafort, he tries to cooperate. I'm not saying that Manafort hasn't done stuff, but it's not related to what Mueller's supposed to be investigating. And when he tries to cooperate, then he's hit with a double whammy. He's sandbagged, as lawyers say. Well, okay, now you lied, so now you're going to do more time. So this is the world we live in. And,
their big target was clearly Trump, and it seems that if they can't get Trump, and get him here is really the right word, because it's not as if they have a smoking gun. It's not as if they have valid evidence. Their idea is to get him one way or the other. And here Mueller is nothing more than the front man for the political left, because the political left has no interest in actually securing justice. Their basic idea is, how do we invalidate the result of Trump's election? And if they can't get Trump, then they're going to destroy people like Corsi. Now, it takes an exceptionally brave man to resist these people, because I think the ordinary guy listening to the show has no idea of the kind of pressure, the kind of intimidation, the batteries of FBI agents, the armies of lawyers. The other side has almost infinite resources to deploy in these situations. And if we apply the good old, logic of game theory, you kind of weigh the two sides, it almost always makes complete rational sense to submit and give in. And so it takes extraordinary heroism and bravery to say no, of course he did.
Well, and of course, in the case of Manafort, once you give in, if you don't give them what they want, then they pile on with even more. And, the justice system is just so stacked against the defendant, it's becoming, tyrannical in its approach. But to take it a step further, we're now in a war between the left and the right. Of course, it's the left who ignited this war. And, Dinesh, we see what's going on in Paris today. I remember as a student at Duke University, way back when, I'm older than you are. I graduated in 1973. I wrote a thesis called The Events of May 1968, if I may use a little French, Les événements de mai 1968. And that was when the French students and the communists tried to take the country over. They were angry that this bureaucracy in France, in the educational system in particular, that's where it started, as you know, was a monolith, that there was no way for people to rise from the bottom, that you were pigeonholed from the earlier stages of your life to go into vocational training or to go into the grand schools, the Grande École, which are where all the elite in France come from. And that was what triggered it. And then the leftist labor unions, the CGT, joined the battle, and that's communist. So today you see in France, in my opinion, that happening again. Now, the French President Macron has put in this gas tax, okay, which is harming the people. They're overtaxing them. So I want to get your thoughts. Is this a revolt from the left? Is it a result from the right? Or is it just a general revolt that we're going to see worldwide, particularly in this country, in the future?
Well, this is a complicated topic, and it's made complicated in part by the fact that even the terms left and right, which we use so commonly in this country, have, as you know, a slightly different meaning in Europe than they do in America. For example, Ms. Le Pen, Marie, the champion of the so-called French right wing, is fiercely nationalistic. In social terms, she is a conservative because she's for family and community and country. But economically, she is, we would say, on the left because she favors massive economic redistribution. She routinely attacks individualism and what she calls egoism. And so the market is not something that she is friendly to. So in the politics in France are a little different, of course, than they are here. But that being said, I think there is a battle going on here. France is perhaps the most secular country in Europe. And so the most secular country in Europe has been taking in large numbers Muslim immigrants who are arguably the most devout people in the world and with a fanatical element in that group. And so this is a formula, a recipe for conflict. And so you have all kinds of, I think, cross currents going on. There's the cross current between nationalism and you may say cosmopolitanism. There's another cross current between French identity and Muslim immigrants who have a completely different view of what it means to be a Frenchman.
So what are the ramifications, if any, for our country? We started a revolution, we won, and the French then had one a few years after that. We've been very close, and we track each other frequently in terms of history. So what's your thoughts about that, Dinesh?
Well, first of all, our revolution worked, and theirs was at best a qualified success. The French Revolution followed by this murderous terror, the return of Napoleon. So the French Revolution, an ambiguous success. The American Revolution, unqualified success. Also, historically, this country, I think, has been much better in its ability to absorb and digest immigrants until now. I think what's happened now is that the kind of pact in which an immigrant would come to America in the understanding that, you know, we want you here, but we also want you to like the club that you're joining and agree to play by the rules of the club, that pact has sort of broken down, and it's broken down with the cheering and encouragement of the Democratic Party. So I think as a result, some of the same problems that Europe has been having, it's not unlikely that those will now migrate to the United States.
Well, I think it stems from, you're right, it's not left or right. It's a feeling of hopelessness. It's a feeling that the government is in total control of your life, whether it's gas taxes or anything else. And to relate it back to what's going on in our justice system, when you don't have a justice system that is an equal justice system that metes it out for the elites as well as it does for the ordinary people in the streets, the citizens, and when you have a government which is under attack by the Democrats and the left, take it down, when there's, you know, a ray of hope with a president like Trump that we're going to have more individuality and more ability to control our own lives. You know, frankly, I see what's going on in the streets of Paris coming here very soon. And there may be different causes, there may be different, you know, roots of it to some extent. But I'm afraid, and this is why I do what I do, and that's why I appreciate so much of what you're doing, Dinesh, is that we need to try to do it peacefully and legally. We need to change people's minds. We need to not just revamp the justice system and get people in who have some courage, who aren't part of this establishment, but we need to get the people to understand that their own fate is in their own hands and to rise up. And that's what I think, you know, you have done with your educational efforts, writing books and movies and things like that. It's very influential. But I want to move on to something, because getting into the justice system, you may have followed the case of Cliven Bundy in Nevada, the rancher that stood up to the government, that peacefully and legally stood down the goons of Harry Reid. and Obama that were trying to take over his land and the ranching way of life. And I have a new client. His name is Schaefer Cox. I visited him in prison last week, and he's an activist. He stood up to corruption in Alaska. And the politicians and the FBI and everybody there is all part of one big cabal. Set him up, 27 years old. He's in for 33 years. I'm trying to get him out. When the government sets people up like this, as they tried to do to the Bundys and Schaefer Cox, what do you think, the views of the American public are? And that's why we need you to get the message out.
This is a huge issue, and Michelle Malkin has been all over it. I think what it is that we as conservatives are law and order people. And in general, we are seen as having a bias that the cops are right, the prosecutors are right. If the government has a conviction rate of 92%, that must be because 92% of people are guilty. And I have to confess somewhat shamefacedly that this was kind of my view as of about 10 years ago. It takes one having to go in front of the system to really realize this is ridiculous. This is rubbish. All the civics books nonsense that you read about, it's better that 10 guilty men go free than one innocent man go to prison. In reality, lots of innocent people are sitting in prison right now. So I think this is a special burden for conservatives to begin to realize that, yes, it's precisely because we are law and order people that it's extremely important that the law be applied impartially in a fair way, and that we don't yank innocent people and send them to jail, and that we don't take laws that were actually passed to go get the mafia and ISIS and turn those laws against U.S. citizens, so when we can't get them on the thing we want to get them on, we find some technicality to lock them up.
Well, that's a very volatile situation. I mean, that's in effect what King George III was doing, leading to our revolution. He took our guns away, took our criminal justice system back to the Court of St. James. And when you don't have a justice system, and I started as a prosecutor for the Department of Justice, but today I've become a criminal defense lawyer. I'd rather be on that side at this point because I don't believe a word the government says anymore. When people get to that point, it's terrible. It's a volatile situation.
Historically, the right, the conservatives have been the party of liberty. Notice that we talk a lot about freedom, and the left talks a lot about justice. Now, they usually add the preface social justice, but nevertheless, they have somewhat appropriated the issue of justice, and I think that's actually very wrong. I agree with Aristotle that the primary virtue of a society is justice, and in some senses, justice takes precedence over liberty. So I think it's really important that we now pay attention to the way in which the justice system and the very idea of justice has become corrupted and abused.
Dinesh, hold on. I want to bring you back for the final segment if you'll stay, because I have a question I want to ask you, which I think is extremely important. We'll be right back.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We're back in the verdict segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We should say Special Criminal Defense Lawyer Larry Klayman at this point with Jerry Corsi and some of my other clients. But Dinesh, what do you do peacefully and legally when you're in this situation? Do you believe that the American people have the right themselves to mete out justice? And how would it be done if the justice system is broken down and becomes the vehicle of the establishment elite that wants to keep the rest of us down?
I won't say that Trump's election was directly based upon fixing the justice system, but I do think that it has had the effect of exposing a whole series of injustices that would have remained completely swept under the rug. Now, the great disability facing Trump in the first 2 years of his presidency has been the simple fact that he has not been in control of his own Justice Department. He controls every other executive agency, but not that one. So the left was successful in prying away this critical wing of the executive branch, and they did it essentially through the Mueller investigation administration, but with the apparent cooperation of people like Rod Rosenstein. So as a result, taking back the Justice Department, I think, has been a supreme challenge for Trump. Now, whether this will happen under Bill Barr, I don't know. But it seems to me that is the sort of first step. If that fails, then I think a kind of deep sense of hopelessness will drop in, because people will feel like we're trying every electoral way to get this fixed, and somehow it's not happening. You know, I've been trying to be, the name of the show, Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have citizens' grand juries on the horizon. I don't know if you're aware of this, Dinesh, but back in 1992, Justice Scalia said the grand jury belongs to the American people, not the other three branches of government. In theory, we can mete out justice ourselves, peacefully and legally. So what do you think about the idea of using citizens' grand juries if the Justice Department continues to be in the tank? You know, I don't like to take a position on something I haven't had a moment to reflect on. And this actually is something that I didn't realize was an option available to U.S. citizens, and I need to go look at what Justice Scalia had to say about it. I think this shows that, you know, when the political system becomes encrusted and sort of breaks down, citizens need innovative new ways to think about what recourses are legally available to us. I mean, we don't want to go Antifa on them, but on the other hand, we do want to think of what are some ways that we can circumvent the system if the system really isn't working. You know, in the Old West, this is the way justice was meted out. It was meted out by the citizens. And if you don't have a Justice Department, what do you do? And now we have William Barr, and I hope that I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, he's a H.W. Bush, former appointees, establishment Republican. Is he going to stick his neck out, do you think? I just don't know if some of these old-line Republicans appreciate the gravity of the situation, recognize that we're no longer living in the Reagan-Bush era, understand or can see that the other side is not playing gentleman's politics anymore, that there's a willingness to circumvent pretty much every basic rule. I mean, think of the ways in which a major party in this country, the Democrats, openly advocate lawlessness, not just in immigration, but across the board. I mean, you have Antifa mobs in Portland on the campuses, terrorizing speakers, beating people up, and all of this is apparently okay with a major political party. So this actually is a different situation. It is. And then when you go to court, we've got a case up there in the Northern District of California. It was assigned to a judge who is an alumnus of Berkeley, if you can believe that. He was with the riots that Antifa did during that speech of Milo up there at Breitbart. You get that, and you don't get justice then either. But Dinesh, tell us what you're doing lately, where they can go and get your book. Where can the people have further contact with you and learn more? Well, I appreciate that. My website is just DineshD'Souza.com. You can follow me on Twitter or Facebook. The latest movie, Death of a Nation, is now out in DVD and digital download, so you can get it from Apple, iTunes, or Google Play, or any of the platforms where you can download movies, or just buy it at Walmart. So yes, I've been putting these ideas out there, trying to change not just to attack fake news, but to attack fake history and fake scholarship, the way in which narratives have been spun to camouflage the truth. We'll bring you back on a later show, and thank you, good friend. I appreciate your taking the time. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. In the meantime, go to freedomwatchusa.org, go to radioamerica.com, share this podcast. It's very important that we get the word out. God bless you, God bless your family, and God save America.